We've got one series sweep in the books and possibly another coming in the Seattle Kraken pipeline. Plus, we'll hear from Jaden Schwartz. That's coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we bring you your favorite team every single day. Once again, I am your host, Erica L. Ayala, and we're going to talk AHL, we're going to talk ECHL, but first we're going to hear from one of our alternate captains. That's right, the one and only Jaden Schwartz. Now, if you are an OGer, an everyday listener, then you know I've had some gripes with what Jaden has said regarding defense. I do not think that this team, the Seattle Kraken that is in great shape defensively. However, something came to mind as I was looking back on what he said in his post-game, or I should say exit interview. And I want to circle back to maybe, why I'm understanding, though do not completely agree, that the Seattle Kraken, were a solid defensive team. And effectively that breaks down to being, when you have so many offensive struggles, the silver lining for the Seattle Kraken, at least this season, in some ways was defense. But I think we need to be specific. It really wasn't defense. It was stopping goals. And that was because of the effectiveness of our goaltending. So I just want to place that caveat because I know a lot of you know I'm not with it. We've heard, Ron Francis say it. Jaden Schwartz has said it. This was not, and I know there's advanced analytics that, can make that argument. But again, you really have to give the credit for a lot of what the Seattle Kraken were able to do, in my opinion, to the goaltending. And that is a little bit of a challenge. It's a little bit of a problem in my estimation, because maybe we're overworking our goaltenders. But speaking of goaltending, we had some pretty good goaltending performances in our pipeline. The Kansas City Mavericks and the Coachella Valley Firebirds were in postseason action. And later on the show, I will give you an update. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, spoiler alert, you can see how those series are going in our rundown. But we'll hear a little bit more, hopefully, from both franchises later in the week, especially if both teams are able to get the sweep. But for now, let me take you over to Jaden Schwartz. This is him speaking to media in the exit interviews for the 2023-24 season.
Obviously not where we want to be, so frustrating. I think we had, a couple losing streaks that were around 8 or 9 games, which didn't help. I think we had a winning streak around there as well, one of them. So a couple of the lows lasted too long, and obviously there's things we need to be better at, and hopefully we can all learn from this, and so it can help us next year and going forward. And like I said, it's frustrating taking a step back, and there's definitely things we need to improve on and work on. There's never an easy game. The year before that, we had a great start, and we ended up, finishing strong as well. So the start's obviously important, and, we're kind of chasing it right from the start a little bit, and didn't get off on the right foot for whatever reason. So, we're all aware of that, and that's something that we will focus on next year and, try not be in that situation again. Yeah, I mean, as a young guy, it always helps getting experience, right? You want to come in and, build your confidence. You look at Ryder at the end of the year. Riker Evans got a lot of games in. It's another year for Maddie, who's only getting stronger. And you can just tell the little things that he improved on, like face-offs and defensive play, and little things that, the team needs. And, I thought he could good job there. None of us really had good offensive years, top to bottom. So without scoring goals, there's other areas you can work on. But I thought Karts with his work ethic and how he can impact games was big. So there's a lot of upside there. Just as a team in general, we couldn't, we weren't consistent enough with, our offense. I think defensively and our goaltending was, I don't know where we ranked, but we were obviously a lot better than we were offensively. So we just couldn't get a grasp on it. I mean, couldn't get that confidence, couldn't get that momentum. Obviously there was times, but we weren't consistent with enough, and it was just too many, long patches of us, not scoring enough, and not just scoring like goals, but finding momentum and carrying it over. And it's not one. I don't think it's one thing you can point a finger at. It's frustrating when the goals aren't going in. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we'd have a good period, and in the second we'd come out and we were slow. We were watching, and took a step back in that 20, and then we'd come back and have a good third. But definitely some starts as well. We weren't ready, and then you end up chasing the game. So I would say that definitely played a part in not playing a full 60, and the times we did, obviously we're pretty successful. So that's an area we need to be better in.
Jaden,
I just think we got a lot of teams A games this year. The year before it was only our second season, and I don't think we caught teams by surprise, but definitely you could tell this year teams were ready for us and played us hard, and we got a lot of A games, so we took a step back offensively. I'd say a lot of it's on us, but teams were definitely checking hard. But that's every night. Every team's doing that. So I would say most of it was just a lot of things we weren't doing good enough. Yeah, it was good to see him. I saw him come in the league after being drafted, and cool to see a young guy like that, building his confidence, working on his game, getting stronger. He looked fast and just looked more comfortable out there. I thought his, even in the face-offs and little things, he was doing well, and he was having fun, and you could tell he was ready and he wanted to take advantage of that opportunity. So was happy for him and how hard he's worked, and hopefully they can go on a little playoff run and be able to help us next year.
It seemed like he looked.
I think what you hear from Jaden there's a lot of things that I took away. I appreciated him talking about Maddie Beniers, who will be one of our next exit interviews after Jaden Schwartz. We're going to get back to exit interviews here. But, he talked about not just Maddie Beniers, but a lot of the young guys, because, of course, silver linings, I think it was, quote unquote, let the kids play, as JD and I like to say. JD, of course, Jason JD Hernandez, the voice of the Coachella Valley Firebirds, who we had on. If you haven't watched that full bonus episode, go ahead and watch it, because as you'll hear in the next segment, JD was pretty spot on about some of the players to watch and the keys to defeating the Ontario Reign. But what I liked that Schwartzy said about Maddie Beniers is that he liked that Maddie was able to focus and improve on the defensive side of things, including at the face-off dot. And speaking of Jaden Schwartz, his numbers were down. I think for Jaden moving forward, it's going to be key to keep him healthy. Last year, we got him for 71 games, 21 points, 19 assists. This season, 9 fewer games, 13 goals, 17 assists. And I like that he can be a net front presence when he's in. I like that he can facilitate in other ways, and of course has a knack for the net himself. So getting him healthy is going to be key. I know we've been kind of bouncing around with these exit interviews, and we actually didn't get as many players as we have in the past. But, Jaden Schwartz, he had the most ice time with Alex Wenberg and Andre Burakovsky. So big question mark, can Shane Wright fill in at that center spot? And do we see Burakovsky and Schwartz stay together? I know for my money, I personally like the Triple J line. That would mean putting Jared McCann at center with Jaden Schwartz and Jordan Eberle, on the wing, but we'll see what happens. Outside of Schwartz playing with Wenberg and Burakovsky, he also had a decent amount of time with the line constructed as he also had some time with Ty Cartier, which I think was pretty cool to see. I'm excited to see where Ty Cartier kind of falls in the mix. But he did also spend some time with Jared McCann and Andre Burakovsky. So Berkey and Schwartz, I think in a perfect world could work. But what the Seattle Kraken need is for those two to stay healthy. And that's a big question mark, unfortunately. And you can't put all the eggs in the Berkey basket. I'm sorry, that's just where we are. But coming up next on Locked On Kraken, we're going to talk about our prospects, yes, but our development system, because things are heating up in the playoffs. In the NHL, sure, but also in the AHL and ECHL, and that has more direct ties, at least this season, to the Seattle Kraken. And again, maybe, just maybe, at the AHL level, we're watching who could potentially be one of the top candidates for head coach, that being Disco Dan Bylsma. And as promised, once we get to the proper offseason, we're going to have JD back, because I'm very curious to see, assuming it is Bylsma that comes up, what does that mean for Jessica Campbell? I certainly have my thoughts. I think JD has a few as well, but we're a little bit ahead of schedule there. So coming up next, we'll talk just about the series, and we'll leave some of our predictions for the offseason. Stick around to learn more about how your Firebirds did against the Ontario Reign on this episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Policygenius. Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. Now, here's what we love about Policygenius. It helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to talk you through it. Your work-life insurance policy may not offer the protection that your family needs, so Policygenius can give you unbiased advice from their licensed expert support team. And they have thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs. So check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/locked-on-NHL and click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/locked-on-NHL. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Again, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And don't forget, you can stream our 24/7 live sports channel on YouTube, Locked On Sports Today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all of the extras. We get right to the point here on Locked On Kraken, on Locked On Sports Today. So you want to know how the Knicks did in Game 7? Oof, lots of injuries there. That's tough. What can we expect in Game 7 of the West in Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, we, of course, have been keeping up with our affiliates in the AHL and the ECHL. It is a Mavericks Monday, but it's also the day where we know that our Coachella Valley Firebirds are pushing on to the Western Conference Finals after overcoming the Ontario Reign. They swept the Reign 3-0. Now, coming into this series, this is kind of wild. Coming into this series, we kind of talked about it. Ontario, really great on the power play, just good overall at special teams. And the Seattle Kraken affiliate, the Coachella Valley Firebirds, they had some work to do on special teams, and we saw them put in that work. And what I loved about checking out this game after the fact is that, of course, we talked about it with JD, Max McCormick, our leader, getting it done. But you also saw Cole Lind step up in a big way in the series clincher, game 3. He actually had 2 goals, one on the power play, just an absolute bomb, looking really, really good. We were able to push out the Ontario goaltender. Meanwhile, Chris Drieger had some fantastic saves, especially late in these games, the last 2 games. And, the penalty kill was 2 for 2 in game 3 for the Coachella Valley Firebirds, 0 for 3 on the power play in game 3. But as I mentioned, he had 2 goals in game 3, the series deciding game 3. And you just really like what Cole Lind has been able to do for the Coachella Valley Firebirds. What I also like is, again, Chris Drieger. And, I think we're probably going to talk about him later on this week because he's been huge. But also some other points that I noticed looking at the box score here is, we have some players like, so in addition to the 2 goals by Cole Lind, you also get goals by Turcotte, Madden, and Schultz for the Coachella Valley Firebirds. They scored 2 goals in the first, 2 goals in the second, and then that last bomb by Cole Lind in the early seconds within the first minute of the third period really took control over this game. There are a few goals let in by Drieger where I think you can see that Coachella is going to want to shore up defensively, just kind of screening your own goalie. One was actually really an own goal. We don't count own goals like we do in soccer, in hockey, but the good news is that those are fixable, and it comes down to what JD and I talked about on the bonus episode that we aired on Friday. There's some discipline things that this Coachella Valley team still needs to focus on, but they're in good position. When it comes to the AHL, we're still waiting to see what the we're still waiting to see who their opponent is going to be. Right now, we have a few teams playing, and so we know that coming out of the West is going to be the Coachella Valley Firebirds. We're waiting to see who's going to come out of the East. So we know that the Western Conference Finals will feature the Coachella Valley Firebirds. We're waiting to see what happens between the Grand Rapids Griffins and the Milwaukee Admirals. One of those teams from the Central Division is going to meet us in the Western Conference Finals. You may remember that we played the Admirals, last year, the Nashville Predators affiliate. Right now, the Grand Rapids Griffins lead that series 1-0. In the Eastern Conference, you have the Cleveland Monsters with a 2-0 lead over the Syracuse Crush, where the Hershey Bears also have a 2-0 lead over the Hartford Wolfpack. So very, very possible that the Coachella Valley Firebirds will see a familiar opponent should they be able to. Well, they've already advanced to the Western Conference, so we'll have to see what happens again between the Admirals and the Griffins. But if they can, figure it out in the Western Conference, will the Hershey Bears also get through? I mean, as someone who watched that Calder Cup Finals series, I kind of want them to get the Hershey Bears again. I think they can do a much better job against Hershey, or really against anyone, but they still have the Western Conference Finals to worry about. Coming up next on Locked On Kraken, let's hear how our ECHL team is doing. They also take a commanding lead over their series. We'll talk about that. That's coming up on Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken also brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. I tell you all the time, passion, drive, and patience. That is the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, LED lights, exhaust kits, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts, your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, and the eBay Guaranteed Fit is available only for U.S. customers. Hey, thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala here, your host of Locked On Kraken. And we talked about the AHL. Now it's time to go to the ECHL because your Kansas City Mavericks, they lead the Toledo Walleye 2-0 in their respective ECHL series. Now, we talked to Tad O'Had on Friday's episode. If you were one of our Locked On Kraken insiders, you got that full interview. But Tad also talking about why the Kansas City Mavericks, as one of the top teams in the league, is starting on the road, playing 3 on the road, actually. And long story short, too long didn't read. It has to do with scheduling and the arena. It's a little bit of a bummer, especially if they can keep it at 3 games, or get 3 games in the bank here, so to speak. But we knew from hearing from Tad O'Had, their general manager and head coach, that we would see Morris in net. And then we saw LaFontaine in game 2. But let's stick with game 1. 24 saves out of 26 shots faced, a 3-2 win for the Kansas City Mavericks. They were able to outshoot the Walleye in the first period, but later on in the game, you started to see the Walleye get more shots up on Morris. And I think that's important to note because we're going to talk about game 2 and how many shots Jack LaFontaine faced and whether that's going to be something that Coach Tad is going to want to shore up ahead of tonight's game 3. So another thing that I noticed in looking at the box score, we talked to Coach O'Had and asked him about Patrick Curry. Patrick Curry was really great for the Kansas City Mavericks against the Walleye. Also, McKenna, really good for the team. So we see that in game 1, we had 3 goals for Kansas City, and those came from McLaughlin, Burchard, and Hayhurst. And then in game 2, which was a little bit of a wilder game, in game 2, you had a 5-1 win for the Kansas City Mavericks. And we saw Max Andreev, who we've had on the podcast, McKenna, as I mentioned, McLaughlin and Curry all score in the game. Oh, and Jones as well, Ryan Jones. McKenna had 4 points, 1 goal, and 3 assists in the series overall. Really great player, someone we have to keep eyes on. And Patrick Curry got that closing goal in game 2. Now, I mentioned Jack LaFontaine, and I actually spoke to JD on Friday, that bonus episode. Check out that full bonus episode. It's up on our YouTube page and should be available wherever you listen to audio podcasts. But Jack LaFontaine, 39 saves, 40 shots faced. All right. Putting in work as opposed to 21 saves on 24 shots faced by the starting netminder for the Toledo Walleye. So definitely got to do some work there. When it comes to the second game, the shots on goal, again, just Toledo is putting up a lot of shots. So what I want to see come from the Kansas City Mavericks camp, and hopefully we'll be able to talk to Tad about this, is how are they feeling about possession right now? Where do they feel that Toledo is taking advantage? And of course, you have to look at the power play. In game 2, the Kansas City Mavericks actually had 2 more chances on the man advantage than Toledo, but both teams came up with a big goose egg. So, need a little bit more on special teams for Kansas City. In the second game, Kansas City only had 1 power play opportunity, and actually it was a pretty tight game. So that was the only penalty assessed in the entire game. Toledo did not see any time on the power play and only had that 1 opportunity on special teams. So this is going to be a tight contest, and that's what you expect as you continue to get deeper into the playoffs. So I think this Kansas City Mavericks team, honestly, they've weathered the storm. They've gone through a lot of different scenarios throughout, but the majority of the time in the ECHL, in the Western Conference, they have been able to weather the storm and come out on top. And I think that's important because this team, if they can get a lead, they can also close things out. And I think that's what we're seeing. We know that for Kansas City, Monday night tonight, May 20th at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time. That's, of course, 4:15 p.m. Pacific Time. That game will again be at Toledo, and then we'll see what happens in game 4. It's a 7-game series. So game 4 will be in Kansas City. Now, will they have a chance to close out at home, or will Toledo pull away? One key for me is that they have to make sure they're not giving up as many shots. Toledo has been able to outshoot them even when they're not leading on the scoreboard. So you love that from Kansas City, that they're being efficient, but they also have to be effective defensively. So one way or another, we should have some notes and quotes from Tad Ohad ahead of tomorrow's episode, because game 3 will have already happened and game 5 is Friday, May 24th. So we'll have time as both teams make their way to Kansas City to talk to Tad and learn a little bit more about what the strategy is going to be for our Kansas City Mavericks. But that's today's show, folks. I want to let you know we will have some bonus content coming out, and I do hope to hear from the Firebirds and the Kansas City Mavericks. I have some media requests out. I don't want to tell you who we asked for. I'm hoping that once we have them confirmed and we have the audio recorded and in the books, then I can announce that. But we're swinging pretty big. But as always, let me know in the comments, or if you're one of the insiders, what are you dying to know about the Firebirds or about the Mavericks? And we're definitely expecting JD to contribute one way or another, whether he joins me in conversation or he's able to send us video. We're hoping to again hear from Tad and maybe a few other players from the Firebirds and or the Mavericks in this week. And it's going to be a good week because on Saturday, one of my sisters is getting married. So the Ayala clan will be celebrating. We're going to have a good time over the weekend, but I will still have content here for you on Locked On Kraken. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. Hold fast, stay true. Let's go Kraken. Let's get this offseason right. And while I do think it starts with the coach, there are so many other ways that what happens now in the offseason can impact what happens on the ice next year. We're going to keep eyes on that. We're going to keep ears on that. And of course, we'll talk about it right here on Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, folks, until next episode, I'll catch you. All right, folks, I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.